Hey everybody, it's your boy Fake Honda. Today I want to make a video that I think would be a benefit to a lot of people who are in the Gameboy Cartridge collecting community. Um, and this video is about how to spot fake cartridges in the wild. Like, let's say you're at the swap meet or something. You go up and you're like, oh, I don't really know about this copy of Fire Emblem Sacred Stones. It looks a little wonky to me. I'm not really sure if that's what it's supposed to be. How do I know if it's real? How do I know if it's fake? Well, you've come to the right place. Because today we're talking about all of that. So sit back, relax, take a load off, and let's jump right into it. All right. The first thing you ought to know before you go out and look is do a quick preliminary research on eBay or Google or something as to which cartridges are getting reproduced the most. So, for example, I would go on eBay, and let's say I'm hunting for like a Fire Emblem cartridge. I'd probably go on eBay and look up Fire Emblem cartridges. If you're seeing a lot of like really cheap ones, because Fire Emblem games are not cheap. Let me tell you, like they go for like I think the Game Boy cartridges will go like 30 to 40 bucks. Um, the GameCube one that goes for like I think it's like $100 now. The Wii one I paid like 80 bucks for mine. They're getting up there. Fire Emblem games really hold their value. I'd say about as well as Pokemon games, so that's that's good to keep in mind for a little side note. But let's say you're like, okay, I want to see what kind of games are getting reproduced. So if you look up like Pokemon games and you see like a copy of Pokemon Blue and it's going for like $6, probably there's a lot of repros of that game out there. Um, Now, granted, if like the label's destroyed and it's just got somebody's name scrawled on it, yeah, probably that guy's not getting much more than $6 for it. But if it looks like a clean copy, in fact, if it looks a little too clean and it's like dirt cheap, probably a fake. Um, so yeah, know what cartridges are getting reproduced the most. Just to save you guys a little bit of time on preliminary stuff, if you see a copy of Shantae on Game Boy Color for like $100, that's fake. Do not buy that. If you see it online, if you see it in person and you can verify it, then by all means, congratulations. It's like $1,000 game. um, but the games that are getting reproduced the most, definitely Pokemon games, um, definitely Fire Emblem games, and possibly Legend of Zelda Minish Cap. I haven't seen a ton, but I think they're out there. Last time I checked. So the second thing you want to get into, or you want to think about once you're there at the establishment looking at these games, excuse me, is the label. Because a lot of these places, usually at the swap meet, they're pretty cool. They'll let you open up cartridges. If they don't, then maybe that's a little bit sketch. But there's still ways to tell if they don't, because a lot of times these guys don't know what they're selling. So if you're at like a vintage game shop, then they may let you open it up. They may open it up before you to show you the insides. But let's say they can't. Let's say the owner's kind of a douche, and he's like, "Oh, what do you take me for, man? You think I'm selling fake video games here?" And be like, "No, no, just have a look." So this is how you can avoid. This is how you can avoid having to open it up. We'll go into circuit board stuff a little later, but the main thing that we're going to be talking about right now is label anomalies. And there are a few of them. But if you can verify the label, there's probably like a 95% chance that you're getting an original copy. So let's take a look at this one here, Fire Emblem Sacred Stones. Give my camera a minute to autofocus here. There we go. So a couple things you want to look for in a cartridge. The first thing you want to look for, does the cartridge art match what it's supposed to look like online? So I would have your phone with you or whatever you want, and look up what the cartridge art is supposed to be. Second of all, I would say make sure that the printing on the label is very clear. The edges are crisp. It doesn't look blurry. That'd probably be the second thing I'd look for. The third thing I'd check is the code right here underneath this thumb. Sorry, I have to do this so the camera won't refocus on me. make sure that code matches what the code is supposed to be online. That's not a huge deal because a lot of these people who reproduce carts, they will when they print off these secondary labels, they'll just find an image online and just copy that. Um, Another thing to look for would be the Nintendo logo. Just make sure on this side, make sure that it's clear, crisp, the right color, obviously, and also the ring around it. We'll talk about that a little later on the actual physical plastic part of the card. Make sure that that is not too thick or anything. Just make sure the letters aren't too thick on the Nintendo logo, and then the ESRB right here. Make sure that the E, the legs, the arms. I'm not sure what you'd. The lines on the E, make sure the E is not too skinny. It's very bold on the ESRB. It's supposed to look like. Now, there are a few variations to the ESRB logo for older cartridges, which I will talk about in a minute. Just make sure that that is, it looks... And a lot of times, like, they'll have other cartridges out there on the counter or whatever. So it's pretty easy to compare it to those if you really are like, oh, I don't know. And then the last thing, which also has a few, which has an, I would put an asterisk next to, is the Nintendo seal right here. Sometimes if it's like the wrong color, the wrong shape, again, there is an anomaly to this for the European carts, and I have an Australian cart, and it's legit, but it's less elliptical. It's more circular. But we'll take a look at that in a second. The last thing you want to check, or it's not the last thing. Another thing you want to check is the color of this tri-wing screw. If it's like silver, now keep in mind this isn't a deal breaker, but this is just something to look at because these tri-wing screws, they can get replaced very easily. So you know if the cartridge like lost the tri-wing or whatever, and it gets swapped out with another one, it's probably going to be more of. I don't have another one here unfortunately, but it's going to be more of like a reddish yellowish tint. Again, not a deal breaker. That doesn't mean the interior is the wrong color, but it should give you kind of an idea like, okay, this has been replaced. The original tri-wing screws are supposed to be this color here, this silver. This almost like a brushed silver, like a slightly corroded silver, I guess. Not really corroded. The other thing, look at the plastic here. That ring around the Nintendo on the emboss. I think that's an emboss when it comes off the thing. If that looks thick or flat, and the edges aren't really smooth, probably a repro cartridge. That's the main thing on that. Now, I did want to show a couple other examples of the variations. And first we'll do the ESRB. This is Pokemon Yellow, as you can see. And as you can see, there we go. The ESRB logo, it's not black, but this is a legit ESRB logo. This is what their logo looked like back when this game came out. So just another thing to look for, just to be aware of. And if you look this cartridge up online on like eBay or something, you'll see that it'll have this ESRB logo. I don't see the Nintendo. I don't think they put the Nintendo seal on the Game Boy, like the DMG cartridges. No, sorry, they did on some. They did on some, others they did not. For example, this guy here. This is a Japanese copy of Dr. Mario. As you can see, there's no ESRB logo because Japan doesn't use the ESRB. They use, what was it? I think Cero, C-E-R-O. But anyway, it doesn't have the rating on here. It says made in Japan. This is a legit cartridge. I know for a fact, actually. But you don't see an ESRB logo. You don't see a seal of Nintendo. So this would be kind of a tricky one to gauge. And I'll talk about that. There's one last line of defense you have. And if it has this, then you can be 99% sure that this is a legit cartridge because nobody in the repro industry bothers to do this. But I'll talk about that in a minute. The other thing I wanted to briefly mention, as you can see, this is this my Australian copy? Yes, this is my Australian copy of like Game & Watch collection. It's called Game Boy Gallery 2. It's just a bunch of Game & Watch games for Game Boy. As you can see, the seal of Nintendo is circular. It's not elliptical. So this also, I know for a fact, is a legit cartridge. But as you can see, there are a couple variations to uh, the ESRB logo and the seal of Nintendo. Now, if you see this seal and the region code, see this one AUS for Australia. If you see like USA and it's like that, maybe it's not really legit. But these are just things to look at. All these are all things you should try to consider. Let's see. Oh, the very last thing about labels, and this is the most important thing. Now, this won't show up 100% of the time because sometimes these labels will get scuffed and sometimes they'll get replaced. I mean, for me personally, I don't like buying cartridges that don't have this, that have a replaced label. I like the original labels because I'm weird like that. But hopefully I can get it to show up on my camera. But there is a number, sometimes two numbers, like in a letter, that'll show up on the right-hand side of this cartridge. Now, you can see it right by Pikachu's left cheek there. Right there. That 24. Now, if a cartridge has... Okay, first, what is this? This is a little stamp. It's like a little tap or a die or something that they used in the factories. They probably still use them. In order... this basically means that it passed quality control. So this cartridge basically passed all their inspection requirements, and it's legit out in the wild. If it has this number on it, you can be confident up to when I see this, I'm like, I'll basically, if I want the cartridge and I see the number, I'll buy it, like, pretty much. I'll try to look at it and check the other things real quick, but because these repro carts, they don't have this. They don't have this number stamped for whatever reason, and it's good. Hopefully, no reproduction people are watching this because they'll start doing it. But if it has this number on it, then you can be pretty confident that you're getting a legit cartridge. I want to briefly, hopefully it'll show up, because it shows up a little better on my copy of Emerald. Now, Emerald is a special game. Emerald is a bit of, yeah, you see on the, hang on, come on. There we go. You can clearly see the 11 and the E3 on there. It's always going to be on the left-hand side. Yes, the left-hand side. That's where you want to look for your numbers. Sometimes, like on my, I'll try to show you guys on my copy of Minish Cap, it's kind of hard to see because it's like 11, and it's in a really tricky location. A brief note on Emerald, and I don't know if I'll be able to get this to show up, and probably I won't. But Emerald, so the thing is, these Pokemon games, like starting from Silver, you had Silver, you had Gold, was it Gold, Silver, Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, right? Now, the thing about Emerald is not only is it a foil label, it also has a shatter foil pattern on it. It's really hard to see with this camera. And some of the cartridges, like, it's just faded or whatever. If you play Yu-Gi-Oh! And you know what shatter foil rare is, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So it'll have this. It'll have like a little... let me see if I can try to get it to show up. There's no way. It's never going to happen. Come on. You got to get the light to hit it like just right. But it's... there, you can kind of see in that, by that ESRB logo, maybe a little bit of the shatter foil. Anyway, that's something to look for. If the cartridge is very, very reflective, I mean, it looks really reflective now because I have lights on it. But if it looks like, if you can see a reflection in it, probably not legit. But like I said, you can most of, like 99% of the time, you can rely on these numbers here on the left-hand side. If it's got those numbers, buy with confidence. Now, just real quick, here's my Minish Cap. The number's 11, and it's, maybe it'll show up on here. It's really hard to, it's right next to the seal, Nintendo seal. Yeah, I don't think it's going to show up. I almost didn't buy this cartridge, because I couldn't find the number. And then on the way home, I was like, oh, there's the number. Another thing you can do with Game Boy cartridges, and I don't know if this is going to show up, but you can kind of peek inside. Actually, yeah, that's showing up real good. And if it says Nintendo on the circuit board. That's that's a good hint. Now be careful because I've heard, I haven't seen any in person, but I've heard that there are cartridges out there that say like Nintendos or like Nintendon't or something. Um, and they're just, those are obviously repros. So I think that pretty much sums it up as far as the labels go. So at the end of the day, just look at pictures. But that number, I always, whenever my friends ask me like, "Hey, is this real?" That number, I always stress if that quality control number is there, there's a really really high percent chance that you're getting a legit copy. Um, so now that we're done with that, let's go into a couple of things to look at the circuit board. Like, let's say you're at the swap meet, and most of the time the swap meet dudes are pretty chill. They'll let you open up a cartridge. It's good to carry a tri-wing screwdriver with you, because in case you need to open cartridges. A lot of times, though, these guys will actually have a tri-wing on them. So you just want to go in, open it up. Careful not to lose the tri-wing screw, because that's just bad taste. Now, okay, you've got your tri-wing screw removed. Now, a brief note, the cartridge should come apart very easily. Like, it should... Hang on. Sorry, this one... I modded the inside of this one because I replaced the battery. So this one's kind of a bad example. But it should come apart very, very easily. You shouldn't have to fight with it too much. A lot of these Chinese reproduction cartridges, they're just, the tolerances aren't very good on the actual cartridge, so they are very difficult to pull apart. And if you can't pull it apart, that's probably a good chance, probably a repro. Anyway, I've got my tri-wing screw off of this one. It should slip just like that. See, very easily. And it should just come right off very gently, very easily. Now, what we're looking at here is the guts of Minish Cap. Just be careful when you're touching the circuit boards. It's usually good practice to avoid. Here, I'll bring it closer. It's good practice to just avoid touching with anything metal if you're wearing rings or anything. I worked in the electronics industry for a while, so just basic ESD safety. Avoid, discharge and stuff. So, a couple things to look for. First, as you can see, it's got the Nintendo logo, or the Nintendo name right here on the bottom with the code. Other things to look for is look how many components are on here. Like, you see a big IC, this guy right here. You see a smaller one there. And you see a bunch of resistors and a bunch of different components. The Chinese knockoffs of these cartridges, most of the time, it'll look vastly different to this. It'll just have one giant IC, and that's pretty much it. The reason that is because it's very, very cheap to produce. On the when they make circuit boards, they have machines that just they pick up. They're called pick and place machines. They just place these components. This obviously isn't done by hand. And it's much cheaper if a circuit board has one component as opposed to if it has 50 or something, So that's another good way to tell if something is a repro or not. If just the level of complexity on the circuit board. Other things to look for, these squares. There should be squares here. Maybe two. And then something I read online, I'm going to pull this out. One of the main things on the circuit board to look for is these rectangles here. These 4 rectangles. So if you pull out the cartridge and it's got these 4 rectangles, and obviously it's got everything else, that's a pretty good way to tell that this is a legit circuit board. So I think that pretty much sums it up. Happy hunting, everybody. Do be careful when you're not sure about stuff. Never hurts to double check, because you do not want to take a loss on, let's say you find a copy of Shantae out there in the wild, and it's $40, and you're like, that's a steal of a deal, because I know this game goes for 1,000 online. or at least at the time of this video. Probably in the future it'll be way higher. But you know, if you're able to tell if it's a legit cartridge or not, then that will save you a lot of money in the end. Anyways, if you like the video, like, comment, subscribe. I'm hoping to make more of this kind of content. If you have any questions about stuff, I mean, maybe don't ask me like, hey, does this look real? Because it might be kind of hard to give a bunch of them to evaluate like a ton of cartridges. Well, you can't post pictures in the comments, I don't think. Anyways, sorry. Yeah, got any questions? Hit the comments. If you like this kind of content, I would be honored if you'd subscribe. I checked my subscribe count the other day. I have 4 subscribers. So to those 4 people, thank you. I thought I would have 0 subscribers, but it's super awesome that I have 4. So I'm really excited. I think one of them is my mom though. Anyway, take it easy.